Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I'm not talking about one specific book, but actually multiple books, because I was tagged in yet another tag video. So it's the my favorite fiction book tag, where I talk about 10 of my favorite books, and the number one book has to be my actual favorite rather than just some book. But 10 of my favorite or close to favorite books that were published in the 21st century, which was a bit of a challenge because for most of the 21st century, I was a teenager, and midway through the 2000s, I discovered classic literature, so I became much more obsessed with reading the golden oldies. So non-21st century literature, and it's a bit of a conundrum because I haven't found myself reading that much 21st century, even now. I've only just started reading Catherine Valente and Stephen Graham Jones, more modern literature. That said, I was able to find 10 books that I adore and wanted to talk about today. But the first thing you'll notice is that my space, where I record videos, has a new thing in it. Right there. That thing right there, that is a piece of art from my friend Cassie Carroll Chrisman. She is a super groovy artist person, and a dear friend of mine. She has been making art since I've known her, and even probably before that. Very distinct, very, it's hard to put a word to what kind of art she makes. But I know it when I see it. I can definitely point to it and say, hey, that's something Cassie made, because it's very different and very very specific to a specific, it's hard to describe what she has going on, but it's pretty wonderful art. And she recently started an Etsy page where I was like, I gotta have this, because I've been constantly trying to commission her to do things, possibly to the point where I'm annoying her. But I did get her to paint or draw, do an art thing of a portrait of me doing very weird things, and which was very awfully kind of her to do. And then I managed to buy this one from her on her Etsy store, which I recommend you all go check. I'll put a link to it in the comments, because it is always good to support your artist friends in any way you can, including through the limited means of this YouTube channel. So go be sure to check that out. She is a wonderful and groovy person. Now that I'm done hawking Cassie's wares, I can talk about my favorite fiction books from the 21st century. I'll do a top 10 list, starting with number 10 and going down to 1, and saying a little bit about each book that I can, and then we will move on from there. So number 10, I feel like this is a very edge of favorite, in that I could easily replace it with a number of other books, but I'd say number 10 is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I was tagged by Lucas, and he tagged he chose a Neil Gaiman book as one of his favorites, so this is my connection right there. I really enjoyed reading Neil Gaiman or American Gods the first time. It kind of blew my mind in high school, and then I reread it in college, and I found that I didn't enjoy it as much, just because it's really loose and it's hard to follow at times. It's still good. I like the struggle that's going on between the old gods and the new, and it's pretty cool what Neil Gaiman does throughout the book. So yeah, I consider it a favorite. I maybe I should reread it again, although that seems like quite a conundrum. So maybe I'll reread it here in the future. Number 9, and this was kind of a surprise, but also not really a surprise, and I'm kind of hesitant to put books that I just read on this list, because for me, a favorite is something that passes with time, rather than knowing right away that it's going to be, all-time favorite. And that is, number 9 is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, which, if you go check out my review, I spent 30 minutes saying very mean things about Mark Danielewski, which, upon reflection, I kind of meant, and also I realized I might have been too harsh. Mark Danielewski does some interesting things with the story of the haunted house. And it's amazing what he manages to do and how he manages to, keep you there for 700 pages. But, he also does a number of weird things, I think 700 pages is way too much. He experiments in ways where the experiment fails by telling, a meta-narrative in some way. And it becomes very confusing, and a lot of things just don't work out with what he tries. So, I do have some criticism there, and I can't wait to revisit the book in a year or two to re-explore my feelings there. But yeah, number 9 is House of Leaves, and I feel pretty strongly about that. Number 8 is The City of Ember by Jeanne DuProis. If I'm pronouncing that right. She, the City of Ember is a book about a sort of post-apocalypse city where the only thing keeping everything from being shrouded in darkness are the lights that are very kind of wonky at the moment. And so 2 teenagers try to figure out what's wrong with Ember and move on from there. And it's part of a wonderful book series followed by The People of Sparks and The Prophet of Yonwood, which is technically a prequel. And I enjoyed it when I read it twice in my high school career experience, and I do want to revisit it. I actually went to the library and I saw it there at the library, but I didn't check it out because I had other books on my palette at that time. So I'll definitely check it out again in the future and see if it holds up as much as I thought it did, and if it truly deserves number 8 on this list. So number 7, possibly one that I'm regretting putting there, is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. I enjoyed reading Eragon the first time. Maybe when I revisit it, I'll realize that Paolini did some weird things with fantasy that I don't feel strongly about. Plus, there's the problem with how the series couldn't maintain my attention past the second book. And that's just because it just got too complicated, and that's the problem with fantasy, is that eventually it becomes so complicated that it becomes hard to keep track of everything. But I really enjoyed the first book, and seeing Eragon and his dragon bond over time, and Eragon becoming a stronger magic user over time too. So I would. Again, that's something I should probably also revisit, and I did have a good time when I first read it, and so a lot of this list is when I read it at the first time, how did I feel about it, and inside that context, it was great. It was all I thought about for months. So yeah, definitely worth number 7 on this list. Number 6 is an interesting one. It's Junior by Macauley Culkin. Yeah, you heard me right. The Home Alone guy, Macaulay Culkin. I remember reading Junior, or one of the other titles that it goes by, Oscar de la Mancha. Oscar, something like that. It kind of breaks the rules because it's somewhat autobiographical, but rules are meant to be broken, for one. I believe Steve said that. The Steve guy, Steve Donahue, who reviews books and whose channel I don't watch too frequently, but that's what Lucas over at Bitsalit told me. So yeah, that's something there. Anyways, yeah, so Junior is kind of autobiographical, but it's also kind of just Macaulay Culkin's ramblings, where he just goes on rants about various things that sometimes bleed into fiction, and so that's why I included it on this list. And I've never been able to forget about it. And I don't know why more people don't talk about this book. It's only I discovered it. Only I read the book, apparently, and then it just disappeared from existence because nobody has talked about this craven, like weird surrealist work that I read when I was like 16, and like you think more people would talk about it, especially because of the internet exists, and like the Junior was kind of made for the internet, but I don't know why that's the case, but yeah, I think it definitely deserves number 6 on this list. Number 5, and this is where things start getting spicy, and where things are like, I definitely enjoyed reading these books. Number 5 is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I was actually going to say Catching Fire, but one thing that I didn't like about it was how it ended on a cliffhanger, and it's not really a complete story if it ends on a complete hanger or on a cliffhanger. So that's my hot take of the day. I did enjoy reading about Katniss Everdeen and Peeta, and how they were living in this dystopia, where like the only real form of entertainment was watching people die in a contest where that they were forced to fight in. I really like grew to love Katniss in this book, and especially in the second book. Maybe not so much in the third book, but Katniss is an interesting character, and after my Harry Potter hangover went away, like I really enjoyed this book, and it's something I revisit pretty frequently. So number 4 is a book that I talked about in a previous video, another tag video. It's Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. Speak is about a high school girl who is raped at a party, and as a result she develops like PTSD. She stops speaking, and like she can't tell anybody what happened because that'll reveal that she called the cops on the party, and it'll sort of ostracize her even more than she already was. So she kind of deals with this burden over the course of the book, eventually developing the strength to stand up to her accuser, or stand up to her rapist, and that's how the story ends. And it's definitely worth checking out. I want to revisit it because I haven't read it since high school, but it left an impact on me, and I definitely I think that's why it's at number 4, because it left that impact. And Laurie Halse Anderson is a wonderful author in general. A number of her other books are kick butt as well. Number 3 is a book that's very personal to me, and it could easily trade spots with any of the other 2 books on this list. I am talking about The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. A wonderful book about a man who sacrifices his life to save a young girl, and then he's in heaven and he meets with 5 people who had some influence on his life, some impact on his life, and it's a really emotional and thought-provoking book. One that I absolutely was not ready to read in high school. Like I read it, and like it's one of the first books to make me cry. And there I was in like study hall reading the book, crying, and they're like all the other students were like, "Why are you crying? That's super weird, Mr. Nothing." And like yeah, of course, but like it's a really good book, and like I had not experienced a book of that caliber before. Like a lot of books that I enjoyed reading, but none that I had like an emotional connection to. And I haven't revisited the book since. I don't know why, but I really should. Like it's worth revisiting. And again, that's probably why it's number 3 on this list. Number 2, and again, this could trade the spot of anything else on in the top 3. I am referring to World War Z by Max Brooks, a wonderful book about how bureaucracy often fails Americans when they need the help of the government the most. Now, the government sometimes doesn't tell the truth about pandemics. I don't know why I had such a connection with the book when I read it recently. It's almost like there's a pandemic going on or something. But it really struck me this time. But when that first time I read it, like 10 years ago, it kicked my butt. Like it was like, wow, this is a really quality book. Max Brooks is a wonderful author. I can't wait to read more of his stuff, and I should really actually seek out more of his work, because he's a solid writer, and based on some of the sections, the passages of World War Z, like, they're worth it on their own. The Battle of Yonkers is worth it. Reading the president talking about reclaiming the country is worth it. Reading about what happened in Japan is wonderful. Like, there's so many good things about this book, and they all mesh together to create a wonderful story about the human race's struggle to survive. And that's why it's number 2 on this list. And then finally, as if I don't talk about this book enough, the number 1, my favorite book of the 21st century, at least, is Before I Fall, a super wonderful book that uses the Groundhog Day formula to examine, the past mistakes that you've made and how you can improve not only your own life but the lives of others by changing your behavior. It's a groovy book that I think Lauren Oliver, like, she does a wonderful job of catching the emotion of the story and the frustration and the guilt that one feels when they discover that they've been a big honking jerk their whole life. It's a book that I haven't really felt like anyone's surpassed. At least in the 21st century. If we're talking, 20th century, 19th century, there might be some books that come pretty close to it. I absolutely adore this book, and I recently talked about it in a video, which you can find a couple videos back. Absolutely worth checking out, and it's like, I recommend all these books on this list in some format. Maybe House of Leaves to less extent. If you got time, read it, but don't try to read it for fun. But I definitely absolutely 100% recommend Before I Fall, because I think you'll fall in love with it, no matter where you're coming from. So that was my list of 10 books that are my favorites of the 21st century. Again, not a lot to talk about, because there's a lot of books that I don't remember from the 21st century. There's a lot of books that weren't that great. A lot of books I just haven't read from the 21st century. I think given 10, 20 years down the road, I'll have a much bigger list. A lot of different books probably to choose from. But as it stands, given that the 21st century is only 20 years old at this point, not a lot going on right now. So yeah, that is my list. If you have anything to say about the books on the list, or you want to recommend a book based off the list you heard, absolutely feel free to suggest it in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and possibly have a conversation. If you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can get this book tag out there. Everybody who is listening to me is tagged, because, it's fun to see other people do this tag video. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird... Wait. What's that sound? Huh. Well, according to my phone notifications, Lucas just released a video. A challenge to me? Strange. I'll have to check that out and possibly make a response to it. Well, until then, I bid you the best of luck. Farewell.